Welcome to The Professor is Live with Mark Salisbury, Professor of Computer Science at the University of St. Thomas. In each lively 25-minute episode, Mark and producer Rikko smart dive into topics shaping our world, featuring expert interviews and engaging live audience participation. Discover groundbreaking ideas for the future and timeless wisdom you can't afford to forget, all infused with humor and charm. Leave every episode feeling inspired, informed, and optimistic about what lies ahead. For more bragging about this show, go to theprofessorislive.com.
Hi, I'm Mark Salisbury. Welcome to The Professor is Live. I'm here with my producer, Rikko. That's him down in the corner. And today we're taking on the question, where are we in the adoption of AI in our lives? Well, for me, I've always been an early adapter of technology. In college, my roommate and I bought a secondhand Hazeltine 300 terminal and connected it to the school's mainframe. Imagine working on the university's mainframe from the comfort of our apartment. We were the envy of our computer science friends.
And did this impress the ladies?
Actually it did. And that's because we did it in the right way. Since it was our apartment, it was in our apartment dining room, it was really hard to miss. So we just mentioned that it was connected to the university mainframe computer. Remember, you can impress non-technical people if you point out that you're using advanced technology. But, and this is an important but, don't bore them with describing how it works.
That sounds somewhat illegal.
Maybe even unethical, but perhaps. The point is that I've always been an early adopter of technology. Do you know I bought one of the first iPhones when they came out? I tell people that it's made of wax and it was a prototype for Steve Jobs. I still have it.
It's probably worth something today.
Actually, it's worth more than the current one that I carry in my pocket. We all know the story, though, about how smartphones took over the planet. But what about AI? Where are we in terms of acceptance? A good way to know where we are is to use Everett Rogers' Diffusion of Innovations theory. It explains the journey, how new ideas spread from society in 5 stages. From bold innovators, oh man, what are we doing? Something popped up. There you go. That's what happens, folks. When you do a live show, something popped up and I tried to get rid of it and I disappeared, but I'm back just that quick. And so that graphic behind me actually tells us a little bit about how the ideas are spread through 5 stages, from bold innovators to cautious laggards. For those watching our show on video, the graphic behind me is Everett Rogers' curve for diffusion. It looks like a bell curve, and it's fuzzy on purpose. To get an idea of where we are with adapting AI, I reached out to Dr. Bob Grassberger, who has used Everett Rogers' theory to explain the results of data analysis that he has conducted. So here we go. Welcome to Dr. Bob Grassberger. The Professor is Live. And so, Bob, can you tell our audience what Everett Rogers' Technology Adoption Lifecycle is and how we can use it to know what is going on with our adoption of AI?
So, Mark, Everett Rogers introduced the Technology Adoption Lifecycle model, or the TALC model, which might be easier for you and I to work with, the TALC model, in 1962. And Rogers was predominantly looking at the diffusion of agricultural technologies. So they had looked at, for example, the diffusion of hybrid corn seed in Iowa. What that means is how quickly did that hybrid corn seed spread across the community of farmers? So that was the first application. And then over time, we saw that the TALC model was valuable for many other types of technology, things that were physical technologies, like computers, television sets, electricity, and things that were ideas even. So we could even use the TALC model to look at the spread of, for example, a new religion.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. And so, but talc has nothing to do with talcum powder or any of that thing. It's just
that would rub you the wrong way, wouldn't it?
Oh, there it is, folks. And this is brought to you at no extra charge.
We'll be in Vegas next week.
Okay. And I think you have a funny story about when you were actually involved with this yourself, right?
So I wanted to kind of share this with you because it kind of gives your viewers an opportunity to better understand what we're talking about when we talk about the diffusion of a technology. So maybe 20 years ago, early 2000s, I was at a conference at Microsoft with our pal Dave, and we were up there, and it was filled with people who did computer science for a living. And as part of the thing is, when you go to Microsoft, they often give you really cool swag. That's the stuff to take away. And there was a little thing in this bag that Dave and I looked at it. It looked kind of like a reed instrument. We thought it was a duck call. So the two of us are actually blowing into this duck call. What we later found out was that it was the first generation of flash drives. So that's 20 years ago. And two of us who were pretty computer literate at the time didn't know about this new emerging technology. 20 plus years later, I can't imagine there's hardly anybody on the planet that doesn't know what a flash drive is. Can you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm guessing it never really was adopted as a duck call anyway.
We tried, and I have gotten no ducks to date.
Knowing you guys, I bet you actually did.
Yeah. It was just fun.
So what is this model? I think it has different segments to it. It kind of explains how we bring things home, so to speak, and actually use these great innovations.
So the model itself, there's a lot of complexity to the model. I mean, Everett Rogers' book went into 5 versions before he passed away, and it's probably 600-page book. But for our purposes, what we're talking about, the talc model is divided into 5 groups, 5 cohorts of people based on their willingness to accept risk with a technology. So the first group of people are known as the innovators. These are the cool kids, the kids that have stuff before any of the rest of us hear about it. They were the people that actually knew that flash drive was not a duck call, right? And the thing about these people is this particular group, again, this is the innovators, what they're looking at is novelty. When it's no longer novel, they're gone. They're on to the next thing. The next group, the next cohort is called the early adopters. And the early adopters are critical to any kind of spread of a technology, because if they don't pay attention to it, it doesn't move out into the mainstream. Sometimes these people are called, Seth Godin, the marketing guru, called them sneezers, because when they get hold of something, they sneeze and they make it go viral. And these folks are, the first group is about 2.5% of the population. This group is about 13% of the population. So it's not a huge number of people. But these are the people that their motivation is they're looking at this for some kind of a distinct advantage, some problem that they need to solve, and this technology will give them a distinct advantage in that. The next 3 groups I've called the mainstream, and that's 85%, roughly 85% of the world, or whatever your population is, farmers, whatever it may be. And they're comprised of the early adopters, the late adopters, and the laggards. So for a technology to go viral, for a technology to actually become part of the mainstream, it's got to leap the chasm between the early adopters and into the early majority and then across. And so that typically, to see something that will really start to move in, you're looking at 20-30% of the people, and then it moves up from there. Now, the interesting part of that group, that majority, or that mainstream, is there's a group called the laggards. That's fully a third of those people. And these are people who will never or don't or go unwillingly in terms of their ability to adopt a new technology. So they're still using that flash drive as a duck call. They are begrudgingly, they move forward when their computer no longer had some kind of 5.5-inch disk to record on or whatever, that it only had a USB port. Now all of a sudden they're going to be using the technology. But they again, it's kicking and dragging. So those are the 5 groups then. So it's the innovators, the early adopters, the early majority, the late majority, and the laggards are the 5 groups.
And this is a time-based thing, isn't it? I mean, that was Everett Rogers, as I understand his model. It takes time, right? And then there's different participants that kick in as you go down that slider on time as you pull in more and more people. So that, I think that's the idea too, right?
Indeed, that rate of adoption, because remember, the innovators are going to be the quick adopters. The next group is going to be next most quick. And again, they're looking for advantage. The other people are not really looking for something until it's like, if you're in the early majority, you typically are going, oh, look, everybody else is doing this. I maybe should do something, right? So it is over time. And so, for example, if we look at a technology like the television set or radio, those took 30, 40, 50 years for adoption. Electricity, interestingly, took 70 years for adoption.
Wow.
And it wasn't driven by individuals. It was driven by industry. When industry started to use it, then all of a sudden, people said, well, if they can keep the lights on in that factory, maybe I should keep the lights on in my home. So we see different rates of adoption.
Yeah. Well, what about the other thing I think is a little twist on this is sometimes things are actually adopted and for another purpose than the one that was originally thought for. So I think about phones and cameras now. A lot of people, they don't buy both of them anymore. They will buy a phone, and the camera is a very important thing. In fact, it might be the most important thing. They're buying a camera with a phone hooked to it, and that's not what people originally thought. And so it's adopted in a way that wasn't really envisioned by the people that put that product out.
Yeah, and I think you actually see that when you start reviewing, the people that didn't incorporate a technology. Microsoft, when I think about the phone thing you were just talking about, apparently initially denied that they were like, who would want a camera in their phone? So if they miss, again, that's missing the leap on the chasm there. If you don't see it's going to happen. Interesting little sidebar.
Well, where are we with AI then? I mean, are we adopting it or what?
So I think AI is an interesting use case. I think it's pretty fascinating because, and again, how do you define AI? I mean, that really, matters, I guess. But if you look at things like what a lot of people, when I talk to them about AI, instantly talk about Chat GPT or Gemini or one of the kind of AI tools you see. And when we look at something like Chat GPT, the adoption rate has been outrageously fast. Just, a matter of months that it's gone from 0 people to 100,000 to, 1 million people. It's quite an astounding thing. In terms of AI in general, I think it's really kind of fascinating because often what we're using as AI is invisible to most of us. For example, people who are laggards might say, well, I never use AI. But according to the Pew Research Institute, something like 99% of people in the U.S. have used AI now. So think about it. You go to your favorite streaming channel, and it makes recommendations for you. You might like these movies. Apparently, that's AI in the background. Likewise with your music services, that's AI in the background. And we're all like, oh, I don't use AI, but perhaps you do. Another example is the Waze and some of those driving things that tell you how to get to another place. That's all using AI. So again, I think it's invisible. I think AI too is going to be parallel to electricity and how it gets driven in terms of adoption. I think we're seeing the big adopters right now, and correct me if you disagree, but I think what we're seeing the big adopters right now are industry. That increasingly, especially in manufacturing and healthcare, we're seeing massive adoption of AI because it gives them a distinct advantage.
Yeah. So what would you say? Is the genie out of the bottle? I mean, we have adopted AI, haven't we?
I think the genie is not only out of the bottle, but I think we can't stuff that genie back in at this point.
Yeah, it's interesting. And the other little thing about it is, a lot of people have feared that it's going to, when we adopt AI in a wide scale basis, it's going to take our jobs, right? It's going to do, and what it seems to be is we are thinking like the camera, right? Is the camera now is part of the phone. And I think we're seeing now that AI is part of our lives and our work. And we don't want workers without AI anymore.
Yeah, I think it would be like telling a guy that's building roads you're not allowed to use a shovel, right? I mean, it's you got to have the tools. But I will tell you, Mark, the future's dicey, right? I mean, I often talk about when I first took a forecasting class when I was doing my master's degree. Probably the only thing I remember in that forecasting class was that you opened the book and in the front cover was a quotation that said, "He who lives by the crystal ball often eats glass." And so I think, for us trying to predict where AI is going, whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it's going to be, I think is probably, it's probably too early to tell at this point.
And there it is. I sense a transition point. So thank you, Dr. Bob Grassberger, for being with us today.
Well, it's always lovely to hang with you, Mark.
And we're back. Well, Rikko, I think that explains a lot.
Well, certainly. I think it also opens a lot of questions for us.
I think it does too. And that's why we're here, right? So let's summarize what we've learned today. When AI assistants first hit the market, innovators pounced. Tech lovers were eager to play, poke, and push the limits. Glitches, no problem. They were here for the thrill, but soon early adopters arrived. Visionaries using AI to run small businesses, translate on the fly, boost productivity. Their success stories sparked curiosity in others. Then the early majority jumped in. AI was proven, polished, and everywhere in the media. And families used it for homework help, recipes, smart home control, and friends compared time-saving tricks. Fear turned into fascination. The late majority followed out of necessity. Offices required AI tools. Customer service went AI first, and even skeptics found themselves relying on it daily. And finally, the laggards, once resistant, are using AI without noticing. Navigation in cars, fraud, alerts from banks, and healthcare scheduling. So, Rikko, that's what we learned today, but we're also doing something very different today. We're asking our live participants to take a poll on how accurate they believe Dr. Grassberger's take on the diffusion of AI. The URL is actually in the chat. So I'm going to open that up right now so they can see it. I have to give a shout out to Kevin for breaking out and saying hi from Newfoundland. And I'll try to say that again sometime correctly. But anyway, welcome, Kevin, and thanks for reaching out to us. But here it is. Here's that URL. So go and take this little poll, and we'll see how that works in just a few minutes. Okay, we have that. And so let's go on to a little story I have. Rikko, did I tell you the story where Everett Rogers bought me a beer?
No, why would he do that?
Well, because I sent my graduate students to take his class.
Ah, good reason.
It is a good reason. He was not only a smart guy, but he was a great guy. And he's sorely missed. So, Rikko, let's take a look and see what our poll is telling us. So I'm going to pop over here and I'm going to look at the results. And looks to me like, well, it's obviously overwhelmed the poll because it doesn't have any votes for any of the three choices we had. The question was, how accurate do you believe is Dr. Grassberger's take on the diffusion of AI? And the first choice is he had the amount of diffusion too high. The second choice is he had the amount of diffusion just about right. And then finally, he had the amount of diffusion too low. So we have that, and there's no votes recorded. So I'm just assuming it just melted down that poll, and we'll just have to wait till it can catch up. All right. So if you're watching live, right, or if you're watching the LinkedIn live recording, you can get the full experience, is what we showed today. And it's what Rikko likes to call watching us make the sausage. So that brings us to the end of another great episode. You can still take the poll after the live show. So catch up on past shows at The Professor is Live or on our YouTube channel or Spotify. They both have video and podcast versions of the show. And don't forget, we've got the podcast version on just about every platform. So there it is. See you next time on The Professor is Live.
And seriously subscribe and actually listen and watch.
And I ask our audience to listen to Rikko because we all know he is a very smart guy. So that's it for this time. See you next time. I should be better at this transition, don't you think?
I think
The Professor is Live is hosted by Mark Salisbury, produced by Rikko Smart. We go live on LinkedIn, then bring it straight to you as a podcast. Want the inside scoop on new episodes and the chance to bring The Professor is Live to your own event? Don't wait. Join The Professor is Live with Mark Salisbury Group on LinkedIn, or head to theprofessorislive.com today. While you're there, check out our executive coaching for the era of AI program. It's based on Mark's book, Leadership in the Era of AI. It will empower you to lead with more brains, more courage, and more heart, so you can cut through complexity, embrace change with confidence, and inspire the people around you. This isn't just about leadership at work. It's about transforming your life in the era of AI. Until next time, stay curious, stay optimistic, and keep leading with purpose. The Professor is Live. With Mark Salisbury, copyright 2025.